here come two angels. Two angels come down, and they're going to wipe this town out. So Lot has them in for, lunch, and, before they go and wreck the whole place, he says, come on in, we'll have dinner, and, hang out in the house. Well, he says, guys come around, and they said, send those two angels out because we want to have sex with them. What? Send those two angels out. We want to have sex with them. These wings turn me on. Oh, no. What did Lot do? Look at Genesis chapter 19. You got to see this to believe this. Genesis chapter 19, and look at verse 1. And it says, there came two angels, okay? And Lot sat in the gate and so forth and so on. And Genesis 19:4 says, but before they lay down, the men of the city came around the house, and they're hanging around the house. In Genesis 19:5, and they called to Lot and says, where are these two men? Bring them out so that we can know them. In other words, we can have sex with them. And Lot went out of the door, and he shut the door after him. He says, now, fellas, calm down. Now, this is wicked. This is wicked to the core, and you're not going to do this. I'm not going to tolerate it. This is absolutely wicked. These are angels. And you can't be, messing around with angels. But I'll tell you what I'll do. Look at Genesis 19:8. I have two daughters. And they have never had any affairs. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring them out, and you can do whatever you want with them. Only to my angels, don't touch them. Here's my two. Marilyn, Yvette, come out, kids. And there they go out the door. And so Lot, in order to protect the two angels, gave his two daughters out to the mob to be ravaged all night. This is God's chosen person. What kind of a guy was Lot? I mean, that would seem to, would you have saved this guy? But this is nothing. Are you ready for this? They got saved. Lot and the two girls. And a couple others. His wife, she made a mistake. She turned around, turned into salt, and luckily, all they had with them were ears of corn, so they were all rubbing it on her as they went up there to have, I'm only kidding. You're supposed to laugh. Unless you were serious looking at me. But anyhow, they went up the hill, and they went up into the mountains, and the town was destroyed except for Lot and it. But this is great. This is the finale of this story is really something. And another thing too, your mothers out here, you want to think if you want to have Bible study in the schools. Get a load of this one. Genesis chapter 19, and look at verse 30. So he's up there, Lot, and he's up there with his daughter. This is God's chosen guy who got saved out of all of this. And Lot went out up into the mountains with his two daughters, and they dwelled in a cave. And the firstborn of the daughters said unto the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner. And so let's get our father drunk, and we'll lie with him that we may preserve the seed of our father. So they made their father drunk, and the firstborn went in and laid with her father, and he perceived not. Now, he had sex with his daughter. He didn't know it. You want to believe that one? Okay. And it came to pass on the next day that the firstborn said, I laid with him last night. It's your turn, so you may drink with him and go in and lie with him that we may preserve. And they made their father drunk. And the younger arose and laid with him, and he didn't know it happened then. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. It's God's chosen people. And this, God killed all those nasty ones there, but he made sure he saved this as a great family. But that's in the book. And that's what leads Marnie and Plotinus to think there is something wrong with this God that is portrayed in the Bible as the good guy. There's something radically wrong here. There is this couldn't be that this is a heavenly Father of good and healing and so forth and so on, and these are the chosen people who are going to be saved out of all of these calamities. There's a story in 2 Samuel, and you don't have to go there if you don't want to. If you want to, it's on page 273. But there was a guy named Absalom, and he had a sister whose name was Tamar, and his brother Amnon loved her dearly, and Amnon just fell for his sister Tamar. So Amnon said to Tamar, I don't feel well, sis. We want to bring in some cookies and cakes and so forth. And it says in 2 Samuel 13:11, when she brought them in, he took hold of her and he said, come lie with me, my sister. And she answered, no, my brother, do not force me. For such a thing ought not to be done in Israel. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger, forced her and laid with her. Again, these are God's chosen people. And one of the great stories is about Rachel and Leah. You know, it's on page 25 in Genesis. Rachel's son Reuben went out and found some mandrakes. Mandrakes are like pot. That you can get high. You know, you use this, you get high. It's a narcotic. And Rachel said, we're talking about Jacob here. You know, the God of Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus, Isaac, Jacob, Abraham, Jacob, and all of these. But we're talking about God's big shots. This is a heavy hitter. This is Jacob. Okay. And what happened here is that Reuben gave these mandrakes, which is like pot, drugs, to his mother, Leah, and Rachel comes up, who's Jacob's wife, and she says to Leah, hey, you know, give me some of that stuff. You're crazy. I'm not going to give you this. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. Look, I'll tell you what. You give me the mandrakes. You give me the pot, and I'll give you Jacob for a night. I can lay with your husband? Yeah. Okay. And it says in Genesis 30:16, and Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went up to him and said, you've got to come into me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes, and he laid with her that night. This is Jacob.